Welcome back to the Hockey Show, and today we are, of course, talking about the teams of the Eastern Conference that almost made it into the playoffs last year and see where they might compare to last year's standing going into next year and which ones will rise after having a tremendously amazing offseason where they added good pieces, added to their depth, better star players, and fixed the issues they had. Some teams doing basically nothing and just sitting on their hands and just saying our team's good enough and doing whatever. And then we've got some teams that might have just experienced the most traumatic thing that has ever happened in their history. So let's start off in the Metropolitan Division with the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that was so good last year, and I was touting them as my Stanley Cup pick since the beginning of the season. They were my pick. Through and through, I thought they were so deep off defensively in their own conference. They're second in best goals against, only behind the Boston Bruins, which if you're up there with them, you're doing something pretty good. And it's no surprise either with their goaltending depth of if Anderson was in net, great. Ronta in net, great. Kachetkov in net, great. Like, this team, no matter what goalie was in there, you were facing a wall. But before you got to the wall, you got to their defense, which is the most expensive defensive corps in the entire NHL. And they've only added to it with Dmitry Orlov this year. And speaking of those additions, they got Orlov and Michael Bunting. They're adding some pieces that I think they really needed. Orlov, and now they've added Tony DeAngelo as well. I just forgot about it. I just remembered. They've adding so much more to this team where they're going to be generating so much offense from their defense. Their defense stops other teams from scoring. Their goaltenders shut down everything. And offensively, they are so deep on every single team. They're similar to the Seattle Kraken, where I would say they don't really, the thing about the Hurricanes is that they don't really have a true, genuine star. I mean, Sebastian Aho is absolutely fantastic, but they don't have a star. But every single line of theirs could easily be like a great second line. Their top line's great, but if it was like the second line on like the Lightning, you could believe that. You know what I mean? But overall, this team is just so good. They're so deep, so good everywhere on the ice. So this offseason was great for them. They added pieces and grittiness of like Michael Bunting, that hard-nosed guy that they really needed against the Florida Panthers in the playoffs. They added Dmitry Orlov and DeAngelo back into the lineup, who was so good for them then. And Orlov coming off of showing that he can have a lot in the tank to provide to a team that's playing good with the Bruins from the Capitals. This team is just doing everything right, and it's just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They are once again my pick to win the Stanley Cup. They're just so damn good. But right behind them is the New Jersey Devils. 52, 22, and 8 last year. 112 points. 1 point behind the Carolina Hurricanes. They were third in goals for. So not the opposite of the Hurricanes, but higher up there in the goal scoring category. And they are adding that youth, and not just adding youth, but the youth that they did have in like guys like Dawson Mercer, and I guess you can say Jack Hughes is part of their youth. And some of these guys that prove that they are great. I mean, Hughes showing that he is one of the best in the NHL. He's just gonna grow on top of last year's season, and then you're going to get Dawson Mercer coming off his 50-point season, showing that he's got the confidence to go into next year, maybe get to 60s or who knows, maybe even 70s. Maybe a guy like Simon Nemec is able to break on defense. They've only, once again, same thing with the Hurricanes, not really losing anything and only adding more back. So for them, I like it a lot. I like what they're doing. The only thing they still need is goaltending, and I think they're not done making moves. I do think they're going to do something about that, but they haven't yet. But for right now, I really like what they've done. The New York Rangers, right? This team, 107 points, finishing just 5 points behind the New Jersey Devils, and you do the math, 6 behind the Carolina Hurricanes. 47, 22, and 13. The Rangers are an interesting team because they remind me of the Maple Leafs, where they do have all the pieces to win, but then they just seem to just fail. They just fail. They're like the Maple Leafs, where it's like they've got all the pieces to do something in the playoffs, and then they just fail. And what did they do this offseason? They add in some nice just pieces to the puzzle. They didn't add anything that amazing. But guys like Blake Wheeler for less than $1 million coming off like a 60-point season. Like, they're adding great pieces. Keandre Miller for the price that they got him for, great. Jonathan Quick being a backup, great. Nothing they've done was like absolutely extraordinary. It's just good. Like, they didn't lose anything, and they only gained. But is it enough? Did they gain enough to do enough to make them go higher up in the standings? That's kind of my question mark for them. Then let's go down to the Atlantic Division's top three. Of course, first, no surprise to anyone here, I'm sure you know at this point, the Boston Bruins finishing first in the NHL, greatest record of all time. And this is one of those teams that things might not be so good for them next year. I'm sure I'm not breaking the news to you, but they have lost a lot of people. Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Patrice Bergeron now at this point. I'm not going to add the rentals like Bertuzzi and Orlov. Like, those guys were going to walk anyways. But from their entire season, they lost a lot of top guys. David Krejci's a question mark at this point if he comes back. The team, no matter what, is going to be worse. I mean, it's just simple. I mean, it's basically like if you have like the Infinity Gauntlet, right? It's like if you take one of the stones off, it just simply isn't as strong as before, and you didn't replace it with anything. They just simply are weaker than they were last year, so they're going to be definitely bumped down towards the end of this video. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I love what they've done with Brad Treliving and what he's added to this team. Of course, Bertuzzi, Max Domi, adding John Klingberg on the back end. Ryan Reeves people seem to really hate that move. I just don't care. Like, it's whatever. Their additions, I really like. To add that grittiness to improve from Bunting. And, like, Bertuzzi's, like, Bunting's, like, type of player, but to the extreme. And then you've got Max Domi, same thing, just a hard-nosed, scrappy fighter who's going to get to the dirty areas and produces points, especially last season, just a great year. John Klingberg's an interesting choice to add to the back end, but the question still is with the Maple Leafs defense, is it good enough? With goaltending, Ilya Samsonov, is he good enough? I mean, I know last year is kind of like, yeah, it was okay. Defense wasn't the worst thing in the world. Goaltending was surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as we were kind of, I think, hoping for. Just saying, I'm just not saying I want the Maple Leafs to fail, but I feel like we were kind of like, come on, let's see his plan blow up in his face, and it didn't really, but it wasn't really that big of a success either. Samsonov's just kind of okay. We'll see if he can build upon last year and get any better, or just at least stay the same. So the Maple Leafs, it's a question mark, right? Because offensively, they've always been pretty good, just not the depth side of things. They added some good pieces. It's interesting. It's an interesting case with the Maple Leafs. Like, I really like it. I'm not really poo-pooing on it at all, but it's just interesting. Then we've got the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team I am very worried about. 98 points last year, a team going into the playoffs towards the end of the year was just falling apart. They started for one game bench Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos. Going into the playoffs, they finally lost in the first round, and everything is just And I'm far from a Maple Leafs hater. I don't care, right? I'm not someone like just hate them, but I'm being completely honest. Watching from what the Maple Leafs did against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then compared to what they did against the Panthers, I would say it's more likely that the Tampa Bay Lightning are falling apart and gave the Maple Leafs an easy series than the Maple Leafs outplaying. Well, they did outplay the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they didn't beat them because they were so much better. This wasn't the same Tampa Bay Lightning that we're used to. This is a different Bolts team that is tired. They have losses, and they're so just torn apart that I think this is about time where the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to start collapsing. The kingdom's collapsing. And for Tampa, I'm very scared because they just lose. They lose more players. They are risking on some players like Tanner Jeannot, and they're just so tired. They are so tired, and they were showing signs of it at the end of last season. And now they're going into the next 82 games of their careers. It's tough. It's tough to see. They lost a lot of guys. So, just saying. Moving on to the wild card. Now, I know I didn't go all the way down the whole lineup. We don't have, the Blue Jackets on here or anything, but, I mean, I'll get to them at the end. But The New York Islanders finishing first in the wild card race, 42-31-9, 93 points from the Metropolitan Division. This is a team that I hate is still good, because I don't know how Lou Lamoriello has not been fired, because the guy does absolutely nothing the entire year, and yet the team just gets in the playoffs. But has he not learned, or the owners learned their lesson? Like, what was it, like 3-4 years ago, they went to the Stanley Cup, the Eastern Finals, like 2 years in a row, almost beating the Tampa Bay Lightning to Game 7, and they did nothing. They haven't learned a lesson. They haven't gone like, we need more offense or anything. They're just like, nope, we're just going to hunker down with the same team every year that's just good enough to make it in the playoffs. But over the last few years, we can't go anywhere except lose in the first round. And it's just so annoying because they do nothing to change anything. Like, sure, they have Bo Horvat now, but it's just not enough. You know, like Matt Barzal is one of the fastest players in the league. You don't think he wants to fill the puck in the back of the net more? And I just want to. I'm just saying, my pick for a player I want to see on another team to have a better chance of like building in their career is Matt Barzal. Could you imagine the electricity he could have if he was on a team like the Oilers? A team like if he and McDavid could be on the same line, still wearing the orange and blue and skating down the ice and just no one being able to catch up to them. It would be nuts to see. So, just saying. But anyways, the Islanders, they've done nothing to really get better. They did nothing to get worse. They're just the same. They're the same team. So for them, whatever. The Panthers, it's going to be tough for them to go higher in the standings or get to the same spot. The injuries of guys like Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad. I guess Kachuk's coming back into the lineup before the season starts, but I don't know. I'm still kind of fuzzy on the injury situation. Like, I'm not getting any straight answers from when I'm trying to look it up. But from the injuries and the losses that they got in, like, Duclair and Mark Stahl and Gudis in the back end, but replacing them with Ekman Larson and Kulak, whatever, Kulak. I don't know. I don't know what to think of the Panthers. I don't think they make the playoffs this year, and even Paul Maurice has said the same thing, which I know is him kind of just setting the bar low, so if they make it in, it's like, oh my god, you did it. But still, it'll be tough for them to make it in. I just don't see it happening. The Penguins. Now, this is a team that is apparently in the running for Erik Karlsson with their additions of already Riley Smith, the additions of Ryan Graves on the back end, guys like Granlund being there in the entire year, Lars Eller, then they just add Matt Nieto. It's interesting. It's interesting with Kyle Dubas, what he's trying to do over there. They're definitely better. They're definitely better. But are they good enough? I just don't know. They're an interesting case of a team. I've already talked about them, where they're a team that's like they need to rebuild, but with Crosby and Malkin and Letang, they're not going to rebuild yet. And with Kyle Dubas not really being the type to rebuild a team, but to make them a winning team, it's obviously like what they want. But it's just, it's weird. Like, I just see this team getting worse, but they add additions where it's like, I like Smith, I like Graves, I like kind of the depth. Lars Eller's a bad pickup. I mean, the guy's like scored like no points in like 20 games or something last year at one point. The Penguins, it's strange. It's strange, and if they add Karlsson, like, obviously they get better, but what would they give up for him? I don't know. It's weird. The Buffalo Sabres, a team with 91 points finishing one, as well as the Penguins finishing 1 point out from making it into the playoffs. And the Sabres are a team I am touting so much. I love this team. They're so electric. The youth is just going to get better. And I love what they've done. I absolutely love the Buffalo Sabres with the biggest question mark. Well, last year the story was they can score all they want. They can score at will. But they cannot keep the puck out of their net. And that is the biggest issue, is that they haven't done anything. And they were my team to be like, go for Connor Hellebuck. Because Devin Levi is going to be absolutely tremendous. But he's not ready yet. No young goaltender ever is. And if you give Connor Hellebuck the net for like 40 games, and then you give Levi 22 games to grow, and then let Hellebuck walk away after breaking your you're a playoff drought and you let Levi take over the net, and maybe you digress the next year because you have to retool or whatever. But they haven't done that, and I don't think they're going to. So for me, the biggest, they are fine on offense, but they've done nothing to really solve the net minding issue, unless Devin Levi does jump out like a Jake Ottinger, and he is kind of ready when he starts his career. So I don't know. It's once again a team that it's like you don't know until it happens, but history has showed us that it's unlikely. Goalies get better when they become later in their 20s. And some goalies like Ottinger and like Vasilevsky are good, and Levi definitely is, I would say, in that kind of that tier of goaltender. But is it too soon? I think so. The Ottawa Senators, a team with 86 points last year, so only 6 points out of the playoffs. I love the moves that they've made. Adding Vladimir Tarasenko, Kubalik, getting Josh Norris back, Chychrun the entire season. Korpisalo in net being definitely an improvement, but maybe not that much of an improvement in net. I really like what this team has done. And that's it. Like, I don't have anything bad to say. I think DeBrincat was a bad fit. I definitely think Tarasenko's a better option on that top line. And Norris being back, I really like what the Sens are doing. But same thing for a lot of teams, so it's interesting. The Detroit Red Wings, 80 points last year. And this is a team where it's up to the youth. It's up to the prospects if Evansson and Soderblom and all of them, all these young rookies, like, are they going to be able to take that next step forward? Because, sure, the additions of DeBrincat and JT Compher, like, make that top six a little bit better, 100%, but defensively, like, they're not, like, it depends on if Evansson does make that big impact. Goaltending-wise, not like Ville Husso's a goaltender who's going to bring a team to a playoff, he's not the type of goalie that's going to bring your team to the playoffs. You can't rely on him. So they're a team that it's up to the unknown. It's up to these young guys to make this team a playoff team. And then the Washington Capitals, I decided to put them as the last team I'm going to include on this because they were in that, like, 7-team, like, race to the wild card, and then they definitely dropped out along with the Red Wings towards the end. But they were up there, and they're a team that still is definitely going for the playoffs. And their additions of Phillips and Pacioretty, I think, could be huge. I think Matthew Phillips is a guy that people don't know of that could make a huge impact in the NHL. It may be. Or he becomes nothing. So either or, it's really no risk there. Pacioretty's a good sign that if he's on the second line, they got Ovechkin, of course, the goal scorer on that first line. Pacioretty on the second line being that goal scorer. Maybe with a little bit of pixie dust, a little bit of luck, maybe they make it in. Maybe, but it'll be tough. So, after all that being said, where do I see these teams making it into the playoffs, okay? So, this is where things might get a little bit messy here. So, with the Hurricanes, I think they stay there. I think they are the number one in the division. I think they've improved where they needed a little bit of enhancement. And I don't see them dropping down. They've only gotten better. So, Hurricanes, good. The Devils, same thing for the Devils. I don't see them digressing at all. I think the Devils and the Hurricanes are definitely the 1-2 there. And I think the Rangers are solid there as well. Because you take a look at the other metropolitan teams, like the Islanders, like the Penguins, I don't see any of these teams overtaking them. So that top three, I'm going to say, is fine. Boston in the Atlantic. That is where things are going to start falling apart. I'm going to move them over here to signify, like, that they're not there. And I know this might be a little bit of a hot take, and you might not like it, or you may do, but during the regular season, I think the winning team of the season for the Atlantic will be the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think the Leafs make it up there. I think their additions and improvements of already what was a good team, especially in the regular season. Not saying anything about the postseason, but for the regular season, I think their additions only have made them better, and they're going to flourish in the normal season. And then Tampa Bay, I also see as a team that starts falling apart as well. Because other teams I see, like Panthers, no way. But you could see a team like Buffalo, maybe a team like the Ottawa Senators taking that step forward, and especially the Sens with just how good they could be. Like, Chychrun is an underrated defenseman. This guy could be absolute, like, the Victor Hedman, like one of the top guys in the league. I'm not even joking. And especially with how people don't realize that in the year where the season was cut off by COVID, he led the league goal defenseman in goal scoring. So the guy's absolutely huge. He's great at defense as well. So the Sens, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I could see them being a team that jumps up there. Buffalo, same thing with Owen Power just getting better. Rasmus Dahlin coming off a great season. Samuelson as well. They've got 3 top defensemen as well as some good defense back there as well. If Levi flourishes, I like their top 6 of Thompson, Skinner, Dylan Cousins up there, Alex Tuck. Just so many pieces to this team are just so good. But are they? I could definitely see, and I know this might sound absolutely nuts, but this is whatever, but crazy take. But I could see it going like maybe Buffalo. Let's put down the Panthers down here. Let's say Buffalo is the wild card. The Sens are number 2. And the Bruins make it in there. And maybe, just maybe, it's Tampa Bay as the wild card. I think that's good. I think I like that. And we see Buffalo go up against the Hurricane. No, the Tampa go against the Hurricanes. And Buffalo go up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's how I see it going. I think this is our squad. And then let's say the Red Wings. No, let's say the Penguins. We'll go the Penguins, the Red Wings, and the Islanders. And then that whatever. And then I also like to throw in that Columbus. Maybe they're a team that jumps out as well. Maybe they're a team that tops like the Capitals and the Panthers. Maybe they're a team that jumps in the standings, right? With Fantilli, if he is a true game changer. It's debatable. So I think this is what I'm happy with. I think. Oh, you know what? No. Oh, I switched this around. I think it's Buffalo and then Tampa. I think Tampa's gonna really fall apart. Boston is still a top 3 to me, and I think Tampa gets knocked out, but they're definitely not gonna be as, I don't want to say as bad, but they're not gonna fall to the Penguins level. I think this is your standings for the Eastern Conference Finals. So I know, might sound crazy, but that's just my opinion, and that's all I gotta say. So thank you for watching this, and if you've enjoyed it and gotten this far, please, I'm begging you, pick up your free subscription. And until next time, too sweet, have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now.